Town. It was here on West Grand Boulevard that the Motown sound started up over a quarter century ago. Their names are part of our collective memory and our current existence. No one song can fully capture the spirit of this town, but Martha and the Vandellas are certainly on the right track. The streets of Detroit have always been special. A young Joe Louis learned the skills that made him a champion over on Brewster Street. And not far away, young men work out at the Kronk Gym, hoping to follow on the same path to glory. On Civic Center Drive is an arena named after Joe. The Detroit Red Wings skate here, and this season they showed world championship potential. Over at Michigan and Trumbull is Tiger Stadium. Having won one World Series this decade, the Tigers are now in active pursuit of yet another. But there's another Detroit team even closer to a world championship, and that's the Pistons, who with a victory today over the LA Lakers will bring this town to its feet. But Detroit is more than just a great sports town. From the Model T to modern times, the hub for the U.S. auto industry. And that is why today is such a special day for the Motor City. For today is Grand-Pri Day, and the streets are closed as the best drivers in the world take their cars through downtown Detroit in a struggle to win. The Grand-Pri mixes excitement with danger. It is more than just a race. It brings to our shores a full set of international challengers, along with the accompanying movers, shakers, and glitterati. So join us, if you will, as CBS Sports proudly presents the 1988 Detroit Grand-Pri. It's a clear and cloudless Sunday here, but the seas on the Detroit River are a bit choppy. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Economaki, and courtesy of the U.S. Coast Guard, in the middle of America's answer to the bay at Monte Carlo, the Detroit River. Just a month ago, the colorful Formula One cars and their handsome drivers were screeching around a chicane at that famous European resort. And today, Detroit becomes America's Monte Carlo, as fans in 34 different countries are glued to their television sets for the outcome of this important speed contest. It's said that it costs $10 million to produce a Super Bowl game. Race officials here have hung a $30 million price tag on today's event, round 6 of 16, that will produce the 1988 World Driving Champion. And there's a touch of nostalgia as well. The Detroit Pistons played their last game at the Pontiac Silverdome Thursday night, and we're told we're getting a last look at this unique riverfront circuit as future Grand Prix are planned upriver at Belle Isle. Well, as this landlubber gets ready to go to shore, let's go now to my CBS broadcast colleague who'll call the race, Ken Squire.
Temperatures in the mid-80s, 10 to 15 mile per hour breeze here at Detroit, snapping at the banners of 13 nations involved in this 7th annual Detroit Grand Prix. Good afternoon and welcome. As Chris Economaki walks back to the booth here, 26 cars are gridded directly behind me for 2 hours or 64 laps, 150 miles of racing competition, old-fashioned street racing. Really, the roots of racing began in the streets. These days, only 2 of the 16 venues on 5 different continents are still street battles, where they bounce off curbs and round street corners and tangle with manhole covers. Who's the favorite here? Well, Terry Foster in the Detroit Free Press wrote this morning that it's Ayrton Senna of Brazil. Foster says, Senna drives like a Detroiter. He's tough, he's mean, he's aggressive, he's unyielding, like all of us Detroiters. Ayrton Senna is also the man on the pole. Here yesterday, his pit crew celebrated his 6th successive pole, tying the record with racing greats Sterling Moss and Niki Lauda. At this moment, he sits in solitude on the pole, waiting for the start of this race, which he has won for the last 2 years. The man on the outside of the front row is indeed a surprise. Ferrari has moved back into the front row for the first time this year. And David Hobbs, the man who finished 5th for us at Le Mans just a week ago, is with Gerhard Berger.
Well, Ayrton Senna refused to be questioned here as on his 6th pole position, but Gerhard Berger, first time the Ferrari's been on the front row this year. Why here in Detroit?
Because I think we was a little bit lucky yesterday, and the car is not too bad, and everything was going well.
Today the track is going to break up badly. It did yesterday afternoon. What's that going to do to this race?
It will be very, very difficult. If you make a mistake and you run off line, you will have an accident, and a lot of people will have an accident. I hope I am not.
Well, we certainly hope you're not too. Good luck to you, Gerhard Berger, this afternoon. And now with Chris Economaki is Thierry Boutsen, the first of the normally aspirated cars.
Well, here's the Belgian star driver, Thierry Boutsen, your furthest forward starting place, Terry. One of only 3 men to finish all the Grand-Prix. You're looking forward to a big day, but Edsel Ford is here. How many of the front offices here, Edsel?
We're all here today, Chris. Everybody from the chairman on down.
Okay, what about the pressure you feel, Terry, because of all the Ford people here?
I feel no pressure at all from them. They're very nice people. I like to drive for them, and it's a pleasure for me to be here.
You confident about the car on the track?
Yeah, the car was very good in qualifying, very good this morning again, so I feel very confident in it. But it's a long race, very long race, very difficult.
Well, we wish you a good race, Terry
Thank you
Boutsen.
very much.
Right, okay, and now as Terry Boutsen puts on his helmet, it's back to Ken Squire in the booth.
A very difficult race indeed, and sharing the chores here in the announce booth is the 1980 world champion from Australia, Alan Jones. We talk about this as a street fight. We remember John Watson in 1982, Senna 2 years ago having a flat tire, coming back to win this thing. We call it a street fight. What do you call it?
Well, Ken, I think it might have required a street fighter in the past, but I think today a ballerina dancer could win it. I think the track is going to break up, and I think it's going to require somebody with a tremendous amount of car feel and sensitivity to the car sliding around. And I think, for an example, I think Alain Prost will probably be the guy to deal with that situation better than anybody.
The track is breaking up in 4 or 5 areas, and that will be one of the major stories we will be following. There you see Ayrton Senna, quietly sitting there by himself in what becomes the loneliest sport there is, in front of thousands to here today at Detroit. Stand by for our live CBS coverage. Ladies and gentlemen, the starting order for the 7th annual Detroit Grand Prix. The pole for the 6th time this year from Brazil, Ayrton Senna. Commencing second, a surprise here from Austria, the Ferrari driver, Gerhard Berger. Third is Michele Alboreto, the 1983 winner of Detroit. Fourth is Alain Prost, the 2-time world champion. Commencing 5th will be Thierry Boutsen of Belgium, the first normally aspirated car. The 6th position, last year's most winning driver, Nigel Mansell. Commencing 7th is Alessandro Nannini of Italy in a Benetton Ford. 8th is the 3-time world champion and 84 Detroit winner, Nelson Piquet. 9th, Derek Warwick of Great Britain in an Aros Megatron, still sore from his crash last week in Canada. Going to the 10th position, Riccardo Patrese of Italy. Then in 11th, it's Philippe Streff of France in the AGS Cosworth. The 12th position, Andre Di Cesare of Italy in a real Ford. Beginning in 13th will be Mauricio Gugelmin of Brazil, the March Jug. 14th is Philippe Elio of France. The 15th position, the USA entry, Eddie Cheever, who was second here in 82. 16th is Pier Luigi Martini of Italy. And 17th, Dr. Jonathan Palmer in the Tyrrell from Great Britain. The 18th position is Stefan Johansson of Sweden in the Ligier. 19th is Stefano Modena of Italy, the Eurobrunn Ford. At 39, he's the oldest driver in the field, starting 20th, René Arnoux. 21st is 24-year-old Alex Coffey of Italy. Then in 22nd, from Great Britain, Julian Bailey in the second Tyrrell car. 23rd is Oscar Lorari of Argentina. 24th, Yannick Dalmas of France. And 25th, Luis Perez Sala of Spain. Completing the grid, Nicola Larini of Italy in the Osella car. So there you have the 26 starters for this, the 7th Detroit Grand Prix. Just moments ago, there was drama here. Nigel Mansell, who had qualified 6th, was bringing his car around. And as he did, the car broke down at the 5th turn of the 20 corners to be run here. He has come back after he had trouble with a constant velocity joint, braking part of the drivetrain. He got this piggyback ride, courtesy of the United States driver. There's hospitality for you. Eddie Cheever brought Nigel Mansell back, and he is on the course. He was in time. The pit road had not been closed, and he will start in 6th position for the race this afternoon. We're live with you in Detroit, and right now let's have David Hobbs give you a description of the 2.5-mile tour that they'll be taking 63 times under green flag conditions.
So, come with us as we go on an exploratory lap of the downtown Detroit Grand Prix circuit, out onto Riverfront Drive from the pit lane into the newly resurfaced turns 1 and 2. A difficult complex this, very long, with a bit of a dip at the end, but nicely resurfaced, and it's made it a lot smoother for the drivers, but the heat has caused some problem yesterday in qualifying, and today we may see some track breaking up. Down this straight, normally we would go from 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th up to about 135 miles an hour before braking really hard and back to 2nd for this right turn onto St. Antoine. A quick shoot up the hill here, 2nd to 3rd, back to 2nd as we turn right here, and onto quite a complex pit, which is turns 4, 5, 6 and 7. As we sweep through here, it goes left, left, left again. We have to brake here, going through this left-hander a little gently to start with, and then really put the brakes on here as we turn sharp left onto Congress and back to 2nd. As we go into Congress here, it's the park, a little sweep to the right, a sweep to the left. The car's up to about 145 miles an hour. We need to be careful of those white painted lines, and also some new manhole covers that have been put here to try and make the track a bit smoother, but they stick up just a little bit, and a lot of the drivers tell me they're actually bottoming out on those. Still in 2nd gear here. Okay, 2nd, 3rd and 4th as we go down Larned Street, under the tunnel. Of course, the gear shift pattern on these cars is all very different. Derek Warwick tells me, for instance, he makes 58 gear shifts per lap. That's going to be about 3,600 shifts during the course of the race. Thierry Boutsen, with a non-turbocharged engine, tells me he only makes about 31 gear shifts a lap. Whichever way you look at it, it's a lot of gear shifting going on this afternoon. Down to Washington Street. This is a very slow corner. 2nd for some cars, obviously for Derek Warwick, 1st gear. Up to 2nd. Down the tunnel here on this Washington. Under the tunnel here, a little tunnel. Still 2nd, 3rd for Derek Warwick, probably up to 4th here. Back to 1st as they turn onto Atwater and prepare to go under the tunnel. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and even 6th as they speed through the darkness of the tunnel here, burst out into the bright sunshine, more manhole covers, but some nice new surface today. But what's it going to be like later on today as we turn right, left, back onto the Riverfront Drive here. Accelerate up to the gears again, approaching the chicane. The trickiest corner here has caught out 3 cars this weekend already. Up the curb there, bounce off that curb too hard, throws you into the other curb and back into the guardrail. The lead cars will be doing 155, 160 miles an hour as they go down the straight here at this 20-turn, very difficult downtown course here in Detroit.
Just about ready for the first lap. That is the formation lap. There you see Senna on the pole, as he has been in every previous Formula One race this year. Formation lap about to begin. Nigel Mansell is in his backup car at the present time, and he is pulled out to start in that 6th position for which he qualified. Here's David Hobbs.
You know, the absolute picture of concentration as he prepares to take this formation lap. He goes away, got a little check. Of course, these Formula One standing start are particularly crucial. Very important here in Detroit to be in the front all through the race. And of course, there's an element of danger to these standing starts. It's a long in a rolling start. Alan Jones, of course, has done probably more of these in Grand Prix racing than anybody in our broadcast team. Alan, how do you feel right now as you come up to the start of one of these very important Grand Prix races?
Well, David, you're obviously doing last-minute checks, making sure all the temperatures of the car are okay. In Senna's situation, it's crucial he doesn't get to the pole position too quick. In other words, if he hurries around the circuit and arrives there much before anybody else, he's going to be sitting there revving his car up, and that'll cause it to overheat. So it's important that he keeps the pace down a bit.
How's Nigel Mansell doing after having this problem moments ago?
Well, he's got an extra problem. He's going to make sure that he's comfortable. The backup car, the T car, should be identical in every way, but of course they're not. There's always got those little idiosyncrasies that your race car didn't have. So he's probably using this particular formula lap to formation lap just to get himself well and truly in one with the car that he's had to hop into.
In 1984, this start was overly dramatic. You'll recall that Piquet and Mansell had this incident after they came off the standing start. The only form of sport except in Formula Atlantic where they have the standing start. 4 cars were damaged. We had to stop the race for some 35 to 40 minutes before we were able to reconvene the activity that year. Nigel Mansell having a problem early on today, but he is back and in the field. Now, the cars have been rebuilt over the years, and they are much stronger. And if you don't believe it, take a look at what happened in Mexico 2 weeks ago.
That's Philippe Alliot. He had trouble and the car hit the inside wall and turned over. Look at this damage. You can believe that this car was repaired overnight and he started the race the next day. A testament to the construction of the materials used in today's Formula One cars.
What about the tires here today, Chris? I understand that after the Formula V race this morning, there is real concern about this course.
That's right. There was the Trans Am cars, the heavy sedans, dug a lot of holes in the course yesterday. There was some quick patching put on during the night, and the Super Vs this morning scuffed that off, and now they're concerned. As of yesterday, there were no tire changes planned, and now they're concerned that they're going to have to stop for tires.
The most dramatic moment about to come up in every previous race this year, with the exception of the last one in Canada, it has been at the start that the race has been decided. Alan Jones, where do you want your mind? How do you want to be thinking? What about as we get down to a start?
Well, you want very much an open mind, because what you're looking for is open spaces when they present themselves. So you've really got to play the start by ear. I mean, you can make all the plans in the world, but once that green light comes on, there could be situations that present themselves to you in a split-second situation, and you've got to be prepared to take them.
In some of those pictures, you can see that cement patching on the various turns around the course, which we haven't seen previously. They resurfaced a lot of this track. Field coming online, preparing for the start. Roland Brunselred of Belgium will be the official starter. He has the mechanism in his hand. After all cars come to a complete rest, 4-second hold, and then between 4 and 7, they'll turn them loose, like sending the horses out of a gate at a thoroughbred meet here in the United States.
The starting flag is no longer used. Incidentally, this track has 48 manhole covers on it. Some of the drivers try to miss those.
That'll really make your teeth chatter. All right, field in position now for the start. Each car 8 meters apart, and we are just about set for the 7th annual Detroit Grand-Prix. Live here on CBS today. There you see Ferrari, the red car on the outside, McLaren, which has won every race, and Senna, who is set on every pole this year. The brilliant Brazilian, thousands of Brazilians here in the Michigan area flocking this track to see if he can win for the 3rd time. The light is green, and on the brake, it is even, and now drawing slightly up front. No, I thought for a moment Berger had it.
Well, it was a nice start there. It was close going for a moment, but the McLaren nudged the Ferrari.
Actually, Berger got the better start, but that's the whole reason you fight for pole position, because it's a staggered grid, and even though Berger did a better start, Senna was able to keep that inside line for the first turn.
Jam session here as they come on to St. Antoine after that big horseshoe corner, which they'll be taking at 120, 130 miles per hour. Underway, the Detroit Grand-Prix, 7th time, and McLaren is out in front. And Ayrton Senna da Silva of Brazil, who has won this race for the last 2 years, is commanding the event in the first lap.
Well, in the past, these McLarens have just not only taken the lead at the outset, but pulled away and outdistanced. Let's see if the Ferrari can hang in there.
Berger is running second. The red Ferrari of Alboreto is in third. And there you see Terry Boutsen in the normally aspirated car running in fourth. Remember that the last time a normally aspirated car defeated the turbos was here in Detroit when Michele Alboreto did it for Tyrrell.
5 years ago, and there's high hopes for these normally aspirated cars. As the race goes on, they'll get a lot lighter. Each time a car goes around this track, it becomes 4 1/10 pounds lighter than it did last time. That's how much fuel they burn per lap.
By Cobo Hall, now under the Joe Louis Arena. Here they are coming for the Atwater Tunnel. There you see Terry Boutsen Chris was talking with just moments ago, now in fourth in our live coverage, covered by 34 countries around the nation today, this great racing classic.
Actually, Terry Boutsen's had a fantastic start, and he's doing extremely well, and I think that if the circuit does break up, which I'm sure it will, this will favour the normally aspirated cars.
Now, we are at the chicane. They are directly in front of us here, and there you see them across the line, with Ferrari running in second and third, followed in fourth place by the Benetton, and then back in the fifth spot, Alain Prost. And there's the onboard camera that is riding with Gugelman, the young Brazilian driver, and he's washing his own lens here as he goes into that big sweeping first turn. And they call it, there you see a patch right there, Chris, which will cause problems before the day is over.
They expect that to dig up a little bit and create problems, particularly for the turbo cars. When that power hits there, the wheels will start spinning. And that's what the tire people are concerned about. The tires starting to spin and wearing out and getting hot. As I said earlier, they expected to have a trouble-free day from a tire standpoint, but now they're looking to change.
Here they are coming on onto Congress. You're traveling about 120 miles per hour here, right by the Crane Communications building. Here's David Hobbs.
Well, already we see the results of this Detroit Grand Prix. Jonathan Palmer's already had this car into the wall. He's knocked the front wing off. It looks like he bent his left front wheel, then changing the nose, putting a new nose, 2 new wings on. They've changed the left front tire already. The rim was bent. Let's hope it hasn't bent the suspension on the car. Jonathan Palmer already now incredibly frustrated. The car getting very hot here in the pit, starting to spew water out the back. If he stays here much longer, he'll lose too much water. The engine will overheat because they rely on the passage through the air to keep these cars cool. No fans on these cars. And if he stays here much longer, it's going to overheat badly. There he goes.
David, I think we're having a full course caution. I just saw the pace car out.
Leaves the pit's pretty disgusted.
David, I think we may be having a full course caution here. The pace car just came by. There you see the leader, which is Prost, and right behind him comes Berger, and Berger has closed up a bit of recent. And there you see a change of positions, I believe. Prost has moved around Boutsen, so the McLarens are now running first and fourth. Senna in the lead, Prost now in fourth, and sandwiched in between are the 2 Ferraris. Boutsen dropping to 5th. Nannini has moved up a spot into 6th. Mansell is back in the 7th position. Derek Warwick is in 8th. Patrese 9th. And Nelson Piquet, the 84 winner, defending world champion, is back in 10th.
Well, the Ferrari is putting the pressure on Ayrton Senna. There's only a few car lengths separating them there. Mr. Berger is up for this one today.
Senna going for his 3rd win of the season. Here you see Berger closing once again. Been some time since Berger has tasted victory.
That's right. He's a 3-time winner in the series. His first victory came in Mexico 2 years ago, and it launched him into the Ferrari team. Senna yesterday said, when asked if he could sit on the pole in all the races and the team McLaren cars win all the races, he said nothing is impossible. Now that's confidence.
Here are the front 4, still tightly grouped together, and I believe they have just moved the pace car down along this start-finish line area. It came whizzing by with its light on, and when you see a pace car on the track, that would usually indicate that there is something more happening, but that is not the issue. We are still under green, and there you see the yellow and green helmet of the Brazilian, Ayrton Senna, seeking his 8th victory in his career here today.
Senna's victories here at Detroit have lured many Brazilians to this track. There are hundreds of there in the infield with the Brazilian flag, and they were rehearsing their Brazil cheers before the race got underway. They're ready for a Brazilian victory.
Well, of course, Detroit wants a whole lot of Motown music tonight. If the Pistons can pull it off, as we'll see on CBS a little later this afternoon, but there may be a samba sound as well before this day is done. Here they are back for this chicane, which slows them down in the main straightaway, because right after that is back to some 165 miles an hour before approaching turn 1.
How racy, Alan, are the drivers right now at this early stage of the race? Are they trying to pass people, or are they sort of settling in?
No, they're trying to pass people, Chris, because a lot of the work that you can get out of the way now might help you a bit later on. In other words, if you can build up a little bit of a cushion right now, when the track starts to break up, or if you have some little minor problem with the car, that little cushion that you've made earlier in the race can make the difference between a good place or not.
Well, from my experience, it always seems to me that Formula One drivers somehow save something for the end.
Well, it depends on the driver, Chris. I was always one that was very much in favour of legging off into the distance as early as I could, and then a little bit later on, if you got tired or if you had little troubles like that, well, then you had that little cushion that you'd build up.
How tired are they going to get today? It's over 80 degrees out there and a bright sunshine and all that wool underwear they're wearing and everything. Got to be tough.
Well, this is probably one of the most tiring and toughest circuits on the circuit, and I think they will get very tired. And of course, if the circuit does break up, it's going to be like driving in certain places in the wet, so that'll really keep them on their toes.
What about, Alan, the cement walls on both sides? Road courses traditionally around the world have got grass verges. You make a mistake, you go out on the lawn and slow down and come back. You can't do that here.
You certainly can't. It's like Monaco, it's like most street circuits. You can't afford the luxury of letting the car slide too wide. If you're on a normal circuit, the car can slide a little wide on the exit, and you can just drag it back gradually. But on this particular circuit, you've got to be ever present that you cannot allow the car to drift too wide. If it kisses that wall, that's the end of your race.
Well, considering that this is a day when Detroit is involved in a world championship in the NBA, and they could decide it all over the Lakers, the crowd here today is excessive. It's a grand crowd. It may be the largest they've ever had here in Detroit to enjoy this great Grand Prix event. We'll be back with more of the Detroit Grand Prix live after this message and a word from your local station. After After 6 of the 64 laps have been completed, Ayrton Senna of Brazil from McLaren is leading. Gerhard Berger's Ferrari is in second, and now Alain Prost has moved into third. Michele Alboreto relegated to fourth. Terry Boutsen is in fifth, and Alessandro Nannini is currently in sixth place. That's the front 6 at the present time. Now let's get a report from the pits. Here's David Hobbs.
Well, Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company make all the Formula One tires, and this year, of course, with less turbo boost and less horsepower, tire wear has not been a problem in any of previous races. And Goodyear felt very confident in supplying these teams with a stickier rubber than they had here last year. Unfortunately, their plans were rather thrown out in yesterday afternoon's Trans Am race, which tore the track up. And these very soft tires look like being in a lot of trouble this afternoon, especially in the heat of the sunshine. Here's Ayrton Senna's first set. As you can see, this is the left front, ready to go on the car. And stacked in the back of the pits, there's 3 or 4 more other sets already in their little tire warmers, getting them warmed up to racing temperature before they put them on. Some of these teams look like they're expecting a lot of action here in the pits this afternoon in changing these tires.
There you see them in their blankets, and now we have a car, either McLaren is Prost is missing, or he's jumped around Berger, and I can't believe that he's done that. Alboreto is running. That is the leader coming to the line, and that is Ayrton Senna, and then Berger is now second, and running in third is Alboreto, and off the course apparently is Prost. We'll try to find where Prost is around this 2.5 mile. They say he's over toward turn 2, I understand.
Well, the little Frenchman...
Now he's into second. That is second place, and he is into second. He's passed both of the Ferraris and moved himself into second place. We have there is Senna in first, and maintaining second now is Prost, and we have the pass, the initial pass made by Prost on Alboreto for third place. We can take a look at that in a moment. Here it is, very short straightaway here, coming to the forward turn, and that's how he knocked down one of the Ferraris.
What do you call it, Alan? What was the technique he used to pass him there?
Well, I think this is typical Prost. They call him the professor, and he sits back and just sets himself up and picks them off, when he wants to. And this is very much his style. He'll just drive the race now, conserve the car, and I think he'll take the best advantage of the situation as it presents itself.
Alboreto has passed Berger, and now so has Terry Boutsen. Boutsen moving into fourth, and that puts one of those Ferraris slowing down. Berger is off the course, just in front of Cobo Hall. He brings the machine to a halt.
Flat left rear tire, you can see that. Tough break for the Austrian. You know, the Pope blessed these 2 Ferraris about 2 weeks ago. And since the Pope blessed them, they didn't finish either in Canada, and now here one of them's out here. I don't know, it makes you become an agnostic, I think.
I'm not saying anything, I'm a Catholic.
So am I.
So there you see one of the Ferrari hopes here today, the car that had set outside of the front row, in trouble, flat tire, and it's almost halfway around the course. So it's a long way back, and it's over this afternoon for Berger.
And had he limped in, Alan, what would have happened to the car? Would he have destroyed the suspension or something?
Well, I would have done it, Chris, because if he would have destroyed the suspension, he would have been no worse off than what he is right now, out of the race.
True, one way of looking at it.
So there you see Senna in first, Prost now in second, and a lone Ferrari in third, with Thierry Boutsen now maintaining fourth.
You know, Prost, for a guy who admittedly hates this place, says one of the worst tracks on the circuit, he's doing a beautiful job out there.
I think he's driving very much to the conditions, as I said before. He's in a superior car-engine combination. He knows that if he sits where he is now and just paces himself and keeps his teammate in sight, he can always make that attack a little bit later on if need be.
Chris, you've been to every Formula One race this year. Has there been ever an issue on tires prior to this race?
No, the big issue at the beginning of the season was fuel. Look at this.
Boutsen coming up for third place, and he is around Alboreto. So now we have a normally aspirated car charging back into the third position. That is the Benetton Ford.
Well, that's interesting. You know, all those Ford people up there in their veranda cheering them on. And one of the things that it's really interesting, they have a telemetry screen in the hospitality suite. And they can see when he shifts gears, if he over-revs, and what the oil pressure is. All the technical details are in there with the hors d'oeuvres and the champagne.
Look at Alessandro Nannini also trying to get in here for passes. They go through the Atwater Bridge with sparks flickering off the bottom of the cars as they are at full weight. And we have one car down. One of the Minardis had problems.
Well, that's Larini and the Osella.
Car number 21, calls it an afternoon. It started dead last. Nicola Larini in the Osella car is out of competition.
Alan, these Boutsen and Nannini, their cars are 80 pounds lighter than the turbo cars. Big difference here, big plus?
It certainly is, because on a circuit where you're stopping and starting, that takes energy, that takes horsepower. To come from, say, 150 miles, 60 mile an hour down to 30 mile an hour and then back up again, that is energy. Although we've got yellow flags waving at the moment. Oh, that's for the parked car. So, yes, the lighter the car, obviously the better the power-weight ratio is.
Well, it looks like Terry Boutsen is doing a great job here. He's breathing down the rear wing of Michele Alboreto.
And there you see the Williams car. Nigel Mansell getting into the thick of it here, too. He's pulling himself back up through. Had a couple of fifths and sixths in this race.
So this has been one of the better Formula One races of the year so far, believe me. We've got tight going here, passing Senna, of course, out in front. And we'll wonder if Alain Prost, when he catches up to him, if he'll fight with him or not. It's interesting. The team manager said they're not under orders, and they won't be if they behave. But if they misbehave, look at this.
Oh, another hit, and there goes the Ferrari looping about.
Did he hurt the Boutsen car, do you think, Alan?
I think that was the Nannini car, I think, Chris. It may well have dented one of the steering rods. The problem with touching a car like that, the front suspension is probably the most fragile, and the steering rod on the right-hand side could have been...
Here we have another look at it. You can tell us now, perhaps. Yeah, that was Nannini back there. And that's really cutting across your bow there.
Well, I think that may have damaged his front right-hand steering rod. Time will tell. But I think Mansell's doing a fabulous job, considering that he's in his spare car.
Coming out of Woodward Avenue, the Ferrari comes to a conclusion, apparently, in this Detroit Grand-Prix. And both Ferraris have qualified second and third in trouble in the early going. Showing now 9 laps complete as we continue to watch Senna, and they're trying to get the Ferrari back in this game. Rolling Michele Alboreto back, former winner of this event. This happened right at turn 10 on one of those tight street corners, right across the bow, Chris.
That's right. You know, Enzo Ferrari is now 92 years old, I think, not well, and one of the things that's probably keeping him unwell are the performance of his racing cars on the Formula One circuit this year.
But with a bit of luck, he mightn't be watching today, Chris.
Yeah, right.
I understand that he listens on the radio or on a telephone and does not watch television at all at each of these events. Gets reports directly from the circuit. So the McLarens are back running first and second as they have throughout the season, but there's a major story building just behind, and we'll be following it live here on CBS. In Detroit, it is this man, Ayrton Senna, seeking his third straight Detroit Grand-Prix victory. Out in front with a comfortable margin over the second-place car from his own team, the McLaren. And that car of Alain Prost is running at a good clip now and is beginning to gather back a little ground from Ayrton Senna. The president will get an interval for you momentarily. Thierry Boutsen, the Tyrrell, is now in third spot. Nelson Piquet, they say, is having a bit of a problem back in 10th position. Here they are through the chicane. Let's get an interval right there. There's the first place car, and Prost arrives at the start line by that much difference. So first to second is same old story here, Chris.
You know, it's interesting. Senna won last year by using his head. He wouldn't wear out his tires, and I'm wondering if he's going to slow down a little bit before too much time goes by so we can finish on the original set.
That was the point you were making earlier, Alan.
That's right. I also noticed that Alboreto's back in the race, and it'll be interesting to see whether he was actually push-started or not. I noticed that when they were pulling him back off the circuit, there was a few marshals behind the car. Yeah. If indeed he was push-started, it could very well disqualify him from the race.
Boy, they have a lot of rules and regulations in Formula, don't they?
Too many.
Right.
Well, you see Thierry Boutsen, and there is Alessandro Nannini as the Benettons continue to do very, very well here today, running in third and fourth position. McLarens are running 1-2, and the Fords are running 3-4, with the Williams Judd in fifth, his teammate Patrese in sixth, and Derek Warwick in seventh for the Arrows team. De Cesare is running eighth, ninth is Streif, and 10th is Piquet.
You know, there were 8 turbos in the lineup and 18 normally aspirated cars, and the turbos are first and second, and the next turbo is way back in 7th place.
Well, they've been trying to match them together, and next year no turbos. This is the last year that we'll see turbos in Formula One competition.
I'm tired of turbos.
Are you really?
Yeah, I really am.
It bothers me they're going to take them out of this thing. I mean, this is supposed to be the state of the art. 40% of the cars being produced are turbo-powered, and we're back to...
Well, that was the original intent, but now I think Detroit and Japan and all the companies are tired they ever heard of the word turbo. They're expensive, and they give a lot of trouble.
Here you see Thierry Boutsen, the third-place car. Benetton Ford. Boutsen, who's had a couple of second-place finishes, the most recent at San Marino. And here is Ayrton Senna, the leader. He win number 8 today. Boy, he is fast. And there's a total difference in style between he and his teammate Prost. Prost has said back before the season began that when you won 29 Grand Prix, as he had at that time, yeah, you can't always find the same motivation as someone who has won 7, and sometimes that works to your...
It's so, right, it's so scientific, and there's so much business. The sporting side of Formula One racing is the minimal part of it. Alan, when you were driving, did you find that as the technology got more sophisticated, the fun started to go away?
It certainly did out of the cockpit, Chris, and there is, there's many variations out of the cockpit, but I think to the credit of these drivers, when that green light goes on, all that goes out the window. It becomes a sport again.
You think so, huh?
Oh, yeah.
The big news in Formula One racing this year has been the utter domination of this McLaren team. How have they done it? Is it luck or is it skill? And will it ever end? There's no definitive answer to these questions, but that didn't stop old Chris Economaki from poking his head into the McLaren pits to see what he could see and find out.
The paparazzi loves Frenchman Alain Prost and Brazilian Ayrton Senna, the Team McLaren teammates. But in their dedication to a good photo, they overlook an equally compelling story: the hard work needed to get their cars just right for the Grand Prix. Over the 2 preliminary days, there are only 4 opportunities to go on the track and test. And during those sessions, the work of the pit crews are essential. Team McLaren has 3 cars at its disposal, dialed in at different settings depending on track, engine conditions, and driver taste. Thus, the first order of business is to find out which setting is best for Detroit streets. So, after a quick preliminary go-around, readings are taken. Then, more practice laps. Analyses are made. More practice laps. And finally, all 3 cars are dialed in similarly. What can you do to a car? Just about anything you like.
We're concerned about all aspects of the car, the total car, but it can be a bit awkward with street circuits, with touching the walls, braking, suspension, things like that.
One of the reasons the McLarens are so successful is that Honda-trained mechanics, 11 of them, are part of the team, utilize space-age telemetry, the ability of the car's onboard computer to talk to the pit-side computer while the car is speeding around the track. These readings are critical in determining optimum settings for top performance. What do the computer readings provide? See for yourself.
We have emission control, fuel control, and air temperature control. So there are many controls.
Does Alain Prost just sit back and enjoy the good life while all this hard work goes on around him? No. He asked for a front spring change, which limited his front suspension travel. A change in the computer chip in the electronic engine management system also came to his assistance. The result of all this work increased the car's speed almost a half mile an hour. Good enough for Prost and Team McLaren to remain good enough.
What do you tell the crew that the computer cannot tell the crew?
You know, it's mainly a confirmation of what the computer said. And sometimes the computer can't tell, you know, if, for example, we have a hesitation problem in the engine in very low-speed corners. That's one example, but we have many examples.
Alain Prost now in second and 8 seconds over the third-place car, and his teammate has a 9-second advantage over Prost as Senna continues to lead. There are the Constructor Cup point standings after the first 5 races of the year, and the old McLaren Honda team looks like they're going to do it for the 4th time.
You know, that's one of the big differences in Formula One from American IndyCar racing is you can't buy a car and race it. You have to make it. When you say the constructor standing, each of these cars are made by the people that enter them. There are some companies that make them, but then only one person can use them, one team can use them. So each one of these cars reflects the original thinking of that team.
84-mile-an-hour average thus far on Senna. Do you think he's gambling his tires too much here?
I don't think so. I think what he may have done is what I said before, build up a nice lead, and if need be now, he can come back. I mean, he's going to be told both over the radio and in pit signals exactly where he stands in relation to Prost. So if he, say, for instance, got an 8-second lead, he can just hold that. If it needs to speed up, he will, or whatever. He's in a nice position.
There you see one of the Ligiers, and almost collecting a piece of Alex Coffey's car there. The Ligiers had a terrible year and qualified pretty well for this race with Stefan Johansson and Arnoux.
Well, they came up with a radical design, the engines in the middle of the fuel tanks, and it's unfortunate for Ligier. They're going to have to build a different car for next year, but they're going to have a different engine too, so next year's going to be great in Formula One with all the new engines and a lot of manufacturers coming in that aren't in this year.
Mr. Benetton about to overlap one of the Minardi cars coming back into the chicane area. One of the stories around Detroit this weekend, of course, Renault coming back, and presumably for the Williams team next year, Chris.
Well, that's Alan's old team. I think Williams is expected to have a V10 Renault engine, and that means an entirely different car, doesn't it, Alan? You got to design a car around the engine, its length and its width and its height.
Completely different chassis altogether. They tailor-make these cars, as you say, Chris, to suit the engine. And I know that Patrick Head went to Renault several years ago, as well as Honda, and he was extremely impressed with their technology. And I think this is something that could have been in the wind now for a couple of years, quite frankly.
Well, you know, Renault's engine in the Lotus a couple of years ago had that pneumatic valve action, which was quite good. Ken, are you up on pneumatic valve actions?
No, not particularly. But we are up on taking a break for some of our folks along the network today, as there's now an 8-second interval between first and second place. With 17 laps complete here and on live coverage of the Detroit Grand-Prix, Ayrton Senna da Silva of Brazil continues to lead for McLaren with his teammate Alain Prost in the second position. Boutsen is in third, and his teammate, who had been running fourth, is just pitted. Nigel Mansell has moved to fifth position. Riccardo Patrese is in sixth, and Alessandro Nannini's car being shown at the moment in that sixth position.
Look at those positions. We have team cars. 1 and 2, team cars 3 and 4, team cars 5 and 6. You know, the survival of the fittest.
Further back in the field, there's a good scrap developing for 10th place. And in that position, Nelson Piquet is holding 10th, and Guzman, the Brazilian in the March, is closed up behind him and is giving him a pretty good tussle here this afternoon.
I think they have the biggest crowd in the history of the Detroit Grand Prix. We wonder if the announcement that this track will no longer be used contributed to a larger turnout than ordinary here.
There you see Piquet in the number 1 car.
I'm wondering whether Nannini's pit stop was a result of that touch with the Ferrari, or whether he's actually been in for tyres. It'll be an interesting thing to find out.
Here's Eddie Cheever in the Arrows Megatron, the man who finished second the first year they ran this race with the U.S. colors, his helmet, sitting on pit road. And he's been in previously.
Tough break for Eddie, being an American. He always wants to do well here in his home Grand Prix, and here's trouble for him. You know, it's one of the only 4-cylinder turbo cars in the race. It'll be interesting to see what engine this team comes up with next year, because they've got their chassis working and the team performing extremely well.
Eddie Cheever's been doing some outstanding work with Jaguar this year in the International Motorsports Association Series.
That chassis that Eddie's in, by the way, is a logical development of the Carl Haas Lola car that I drove here in '86, and that was going to be the 88 or 87, 88 car if that team would have continued.
I see. That's interesting.
Ayrton Senna staying well in front. Advantage about 8 seconds. It had been 9, 9.5. And Prost has closed up just a bit on him, but Senna, at the moment, has this race in hand.
It makes it look easy, you know. When the car's working right, you got a driver that knows the track and knows how to go around. And Derek Warwick is just headed for the pit, so the Arrows team is in trouble. But it's to watch Senna. He's so dedicated. Bernie Ecclestone said at breakfast the other morning that Alain Prost is half a second faster than any other driver on the track, and Ayrton Senna's half a second faster than Prost. He's just truly fast. Al, what does it make a driver fast? Is it bravura? Is it ability? Is it attitude? What is it?
All of those things, Chris. I think that your attitude attitude. You need a certain amount of natural talent, balance, aggression. I think you definitely have to have a certain amount of aggression. Single-mindedness.
He has all those things.
David Hobbs right now has a report. You were reporting earlier on what it takes for the big team to make it work here, McLaren. David Hobbs has the other side of the story.
Well, of course, another big team down here is the Williams team, the current world champion manufacturers, and their engines supplied by John Judd, a small team from England. John, what do you subscribe your success in the face of such opposition from people like Honda?
I didn't catch it, David.
Why do you subscribe your success in the face of such incredible competition from people like Honda?
I'd say at the moment we're only successful by having engine available. We can't give it to Honda on technical terms.
Why not? Because of money?
Basically money, people. They've got tremendous resources, very dedicated people. They're the smartest in the business at the moment.
How many people have you got working for you in Rugby, England?
40 about.
So you've got about as many people working in the whole factory as Honda have got right here at this race?
That'll be fair comment, I reckon, yeah.
And yet, in face of that, you've got the world champion Formula One team, Williams, and also the current IndyCar champion, Bobby Rahal, all use Judd engines, right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. I think we'll put a reasonable show up this year, I think, and we hope to improve next year.
Well, I think there's a guy who should feel pretty proud of himself. 2 national champions at his disposal, and Ken's got more about the race up in the booth.
And more about that Judd story, for as you were talking with him, we can see Nigel Mansell retiring the spare car and walking away from the Detroit Grand Prix.
Nigel Mansell, who won 6 races last year and was a contender for the World Championship, does not have a single point this year and won't get one today.
13-time winner, Nigel Mansell, trying to get something going here at Detroit. He's had some good runs and some just desperate luck in this race. A 6th-place finish a year ago, and he's out of it today, and he was almost out of it before the race began when a CV joint broke on him, and he got a free lift, courtesy of Eddie Cheever, back to the pit area and was able to get the reserve car out and get back on the grid before the pit lane was closed. Now that car has come to conclusion 19 laps into the event.
How tough is it, Al, emotionally, for a driver who's on top of the world, as Nigel Mansell was last year, to become an also-ran overnight through no fault of your own?
Well, it's certainly very character-building, Chris, that's for sure. But I think he's a fairly philosophical sort of a guy. He knows that he hasn't got the engine this year. I mean, there's the old saying, there's no substitute for horsepower. And he knows he hasn't got it this year, but he also knows that on the horizon is possibly that V10 Renault, and so therefore he's just got to look at this year, do the best he can, and build his hopes up for next year.
Williams and Benetton, they're going to be really something to contend with in 1989. So Nigel Mansell has retired from the event. Checking on the attrition thus far, they said they thought this would be a race where there would be few cars finishing. Thus far, 5 cars have retired. Stefan Johansson is out. Gerhard Berger, Larini, Streif, and Mansell is the 5th driver to come out of this 26-car field that began the day. And here we see one of the Ligers being passed by the leader, Senna, at the chicane, the 20th turn, and then back to the line to complete lap number 20.
Well, Terry Boutsen is lying 3rd now. The engine in that car is a derivative of the famed DFV, and the Ford people told me this weekend that their new engine that's supposed to be better will probably not be put into service until late next season. This engine is doing so well now that it'll be the standard bearer for them in 1989.
Well, Chris, I think they've learnt their lesson from putting their engines in a bit prematurely. I know that I had a Ford in the back of me in 1986, and whilst it was a lovely little engine, it certainly lacked a bit of horsepower.
That had to be a frustrating year for you.
Well, turned him into a television commentator.
That's how bad things got.
The greatest number of victories in a season was done by this team McLaren back in '84 with Prost and Lauda as the drivers. And here is Senna about to put a lap on his countryman Piquet as the boys from Brazil come down under the Larned Street Tunnel.
No love lost there.
Oh, none. None. There's been some very sharp comments made by Piquet about Senna, questioning Senna's masculinity. He also said that that Nigel Mansell was a blockhead and that his wife was very unattractive. How would you like to have him for a PR problem?
Well, you know, I can just see somebody, if these were stock car races and somebody said like that, when that situation was one of them would be in the wall.
He also says that he doesn't mind getting on the rostrum when he gets 3rd, as long as it's Prost that wins and Senna gets 2nd.
Yes.
So there you see Senna currently running in the lead, and it still stays at 9 seconds between 1st and 2nd place. After 21 laps have been completed in our live coverage of the Detroit Grand Prix, Senna remains on the point with teammate Prost in second. Now let's take a look a little further back here. Boutsen in third, Ricardo Patrese is fourth. De Cesare is up to fifth. There's a bit of a surprise. Of course, he qualified once very well here up in the front row. And Gugelmin has come into the sixth position. Now here are the retirements and the rationale for their leaving the race. So we have 21 cars remaining in the event. Stefan Johansson, the first to officially retire, former second-place finisher on this course. And this may be the last time that we see this course, as Chris mentioned at the top of the program, that it may be on to Belle Isle next year. Maybe we can get a look at Belle Isle before the afternoon is over. There's Ayrton Senna out in front, 8 or 9 second advantage over second place. You know, the best year that a team ever had was, what, 84, when Prost and Lotto won the 12 races from McLaren. This could be the year when these red and white colors break that mark.
Well, to have one driver win all the pole positions so far, here we are in the middle of June, and no one has come near Ayrton Senna's pole-winning ability. It's truly marked. His pole position here tied him, as you said earlier, with Sterling Moss and Niki Lauda for the most consecutive poles, 6. And at the French Grand Prix next week, a couple of weeks from now, he may set a new record for himself. Quite an achievement for a young driver.
Let's talk to one of the men who is now on pit road and wishes very much to be part of this U.S. Grand Prix. Here's David Hobbs with Eddie Cheever.
Well, one very disappointed driver, Eddie Cheever, sponsored by USF&G, and the only American in the race. Eddie, what went wrong?
I've had a terrible weekend right from the first day we started running here. I don't know. I had problems in practice, and in the race I had an engine problem right from the beginning, and that's really slippery out there. My engine wouldn't pick up, so by not picking up I was getting a lot of wheel spin, and I was just bad from day one.
So not a good day for you in the USGP. Now, what about this racetrack? Is it going to be as bad as they say?
I think it's going to be worse than everybody makes it out to be. I saw Piquet's tires, who was running in front of me, and they didn't look too good. I came in a little bit early because I was having a problem with the engine picking up and getting a lot of wheel spin. I think it's going to be very slippery, and the last 20 laps are going to be very difficult. For us, the USF&G Aeros, it's a great disappointment today. This is our home Grand Prix, and this is the worst Grand Prix we've had the whole season. I hope it picks up from here on.
Well, I hope it does, because your teammate, Derek Warwick's also been in. Do you know what he came in for?
I saw it. I was sitting here waiting for them to fix my car, and I think he came in for tires also. I mean, the track is very slippery, and for some reason, it's eating up the tires at a rate that's unbelievable. I mean, I think you might see more than one pit stop even for the leaders.
So it looks like we're going to see a lot of action here in the pits this afternoon. A very disappointed American driver here in the USGP. Back to you, Ken and Chris and Alan in the booth.
Well, the heavier car is the turbo car by these new restrictions they put in for this year. I wonder how that would make these cars of Senna and Prost fare. Those normally aspirated cars are not that far back at the present time. Thierry Boutsen's car lying third on the field.
Well, that's right. I think because the normally aspirated cars are lighter and also a lot more progressive with their power input. These turbo cars not only being heavier, but their power input is a lot more, but a lot more sudden as well. When you put your foot on the accelerator, the turbo comes in, and therefore the wheels have a little bit more of a tendency to spin a little bit more easier than the normally aspirated car. You've got more of a feel through the throttle with the normally aspirated car.
With all this Honda people here and all this technology, electronic this, electronic that, haven't they eliminated the turbo lag and that explosive come on of power?
They have eliminated it a great deal, but certainly nowhere near as well as a normally aspirated car.
Well, we'll be back with more of the Detroit Grand Prix. Don't forget, later this afternoon, it's the NBA, and it could be the finals with Detroit against the Lakers. Be with us for sure. We're with you live at the streets of Detroit for the U.S. Grand Prix, and we're watching Derek Warwick of Great Britain in the Aeros Megatron car, now coming very slowly back into the pit area, and it's been about 3/4 of a lap at this rate, so it looks to be terminal for Derek Warwick this afternoon. Coming up later this afternoon, 3:30, CBS will be taking you to California, and it's Game 6, and it could be the final for the Detroit Pistons. And for the L.A. Lakers, it's a must-win. Bob Stenner, our producer, was talking with Pat Riley this morning. Pat said there are no secrets anymore. He said, we've played 5 games, so there's not a whole lot of strategy here. He says the Pistons are playing their championship game this afternoon, and we the Lakers are playing our Game 7. He said simply, we need our greatest effort ever. The thoughts of Chuck Daly that Bob also recorded we'll get back to a bit later in today's broadcast. Here you are watching Senna still continuing to draw. We'll get an interval for you now between the first and second place cars. Senna and Prost. McLaren continues to draw a bead on another victory.
You know, you talk about the Pistons a moment ago. One of the cars entered here had a big Go Pistons logo on it. Unfortunately, it didn't go fast enough to get into the race, and I hope that isn't a portent of things to come.
And the whole city, the atmosphere of it, between the Pistons and this race, there was a great sign that there's a Pistons sign right there. Said the newspaper yesterday had a blazing headline that said, Pistons are turbocharged. They go to Los Angeles. That's this afternoon, 3:30 here on CBS. Now there's the leader as we check the interval back to the second place on the companion car to Ayrton Senna. Pretty good margin developing here. Gives you an idea of just how far apart those two are as Prost continues to try to nip away and get back into this thing. Not as fiery, not as flamboyant in his driving. Now here's the number 4 car of Julian Bailey. Looks like it's running a tad slow here.
Senna has lapped everybody but the 6th place man. That's how fast he's going and how well he's going.
Taking a look back in the standings here, the 5th place is De Cesare, and there in 6th place is our in-car camera. That is Guzman out of Brazil, Ayrton Senna's good friend. That was the fellow in the blue car, the March, that Senna wanted with him as a Lotus teammate, Alan.
That's correct. He wanted Google with him a couple of years ago, but guess who was supplying the engines then, and that's why Nakajima got the drive.
Right. Here's the lens getting washed off and getting around a back marker and continuing to move through the field. I believe that was Oscar Larari that he just whirled around there. There's the Minardi, and then behind him comes the Larari ride. So, at this point, Guzman looks like he is going to score some points for March. They did pretty well the last time out up in Canada. They got a 5th place finish with those blue Ferraris. They may do it again today.
His teammate, Ivan Capelli, had problems here yesterday and had an accident and broke a bone in his foot. It was a tough break for this personable young Italian. He's the comedian of the Formula One series, it seems.
Here's another car in trouble. The Arrows, the second one, is now... Rather, the second Williams car is coming to a halt. Patrese is coming to a halt here. Ricardo Patrese down. So that means both Williams cars with the jet powers had trouble today.
It's interesting, you know. Here
and there they are.
Side by side.
Wow. Leader going by.
You know, it's interesting. When the cars run well, they run well together. The 2 McLarens are first and second. The 2 Canada Williams cars are out of the race. The 2 Arrows cars are out of the race. In Canada, the 2 Ferraris went out of the race. They're like twin brothers or twin sisters.
That's a real shame because I thought these cars probably would have gone a lot better here than what they've shown so far. But they have been having a lot of trouble with the overheating in the Judd engine. And I think the chassis are working better and better by the race. But that's a real shame for Frank Williams, who's here today.
167 start for Ricardo Patrese, and it ends right here exactly where Nigel Mansell's car ended up, within 5-10 feet. Meanwhile, Senna continues to move through. There's another of the Minardi cars directly in front of Ayrton Senna in the turbo-powered McLaren Honda-powered machine, going by the City County building here, off of Woodward Avenue, now down Jefferson, headed back to the Cobo Hall and to the Joe Louis Arena area of Detroit. Ayrton Senna leading here in the Detroit Grand Prix.
If he wins it today, it'll be 3 straight for him in 3 different kinds of cars. First victory was in a Lotus Renault, the second victory in a Lotus Honda, and today would be a McLaren Honda.
Let's go to David Hobbs, who's standing by with Nigel Mansell.
Nigel, you've always done so well here at Detroit. What happened today?
The engine just stopped, and my race car on the warm-up lap to the grid, drive shaft or the gearbox broke. So I was using the T car. I think they've got engine trouble too.
Certainly sounds like it.
And our engine just stopped.
Now I hear your teammate Patrese out as well. Do you know if it's the same problem?
I thought he was still in 4th.
I think he's out too, I just heard on the headset.
Oh boy.
So a bad day for the Williams team.
It's been a great day again.
What about the golf match over there in Boston?
The golf is fantastic, because if you blow up at golf, or put the ball in the water, you get another one out of your pocket, and you drop it on the floor, and you drop 2 shots or something, and you just play on.
So there we can see where Nigel Mansell's heart is this afternoon, watching his old pal Sandy Lyle over in Boston. Thanks, Nigel, and sorry to see you out the race.
Okay, and I hope Nick Faldo's there too.
Thank you.
And Piquet is now out of the race as well. Former winner and 3-time world champion Nelson Piquet is walking away from the Lotus car. End of the day for that team.
Talking of golf, Nigel Mansell was telling me yesterday that he's actually been accepted for the Australian Open. And a very good friend of his, obviously, is Greg Norman, and Greg's been coaching him, and Nigel's been playing 71s and 70s, and he's been accepted for the Australian Open, so he's looking forward to that.
His favorite golf course is right here in Michigan, in the United States, that is.
There goes Nelson Piquet. In addition to the battle among cars, there's a battle among sponsors here. Here's the one cigarette company's cars are first and second. Another cigarette company's car just went out of the race.
Chris, did you notice where with the March car that's carrying our camera, they picked up their 89th different sponsor for that car here at Detroit? A lot of sponsorship.
You know, it takes a lot of money to run one of these cars. You need a lot of sponsorship. Auto racing in general, with the high-tech mode that it's in, has become a colossal charity case.
Here's the Senna car out in front, and this colossal charity case right here looks like he's going to take his 3rd win of the season the way things are going at the present time. We'll be back with more of the Detroit Grand Prix after this message and a word from your local station. 31 of the 64 laps are complete this afternoon in the Detroit Grand Prix. And from the Goodyear Blimp Enterprise out of Pompano Beach, Florida, you're looking at Belle Isle to be the new home of the Detroit Grand Prix. After 70 years here circling the Renaissance Center in Detroit, the word is it's going to move to that end of the island right there that you're looking at. And Chris, it's a story of economics.
Well, that's true. It's going to cost about $20 million to build this course. And from what I understand is the racing people feel the mayor's going to pay for it. And the mayor feels the racing people are going to pay for it. And I heard it's an agreement in principle.
I heard the governor being said we're going to get it done. We're going to get this built on television the other night here in town.
The interest that this race has generated for Detroit is monumental, and I think maybe industry will get in there and catalyze this with a few bucks.
I was going to say, Chris, it might revert back to the good old sponsor again.
Right. Here you see Ayrton Senna carrying his sponsorship color mighty proud today as he continues to draw away. Now he's picked up a couple of seconds on Prost, running in the 2nd position as McLaren continues to dominate. They took 300 horsepower away from these turbo cars at the beginning of the season, but apparently somebody forgot to tell McLaren.
I guess, you know, but Senna, I've never seen a driver so car conscious as Ayrton Senna. He picks a car the way a Jewish mother picks a son-in-law, very carefully. I mean, he goes over every aspect of that car before the race, and it's just right.
Here's Andre de Cesare, I believe, that is running currently. Now we're further back. We're back in the 12th position. Let's see, is that the 22 car of Andre de Cesare right there? And he would be running in 4th. The blue car is the real Ford, and that's a wheelmaker out of Europe that is Cosworth powered, running in 4th position. This could be de Cesare's greatest day. He's very famous for hitting every curb and every piece of concrete around this place. He's having an excellent race this afternoon.
Well, that's right. I think he owns most of the Detroit circuit. He certainly bought a lot of the concrete section of it.
You know, many years ago there was an Italian driver in this country very famous for hitting things. His name is Mario Andretti. Look where he is today.
That's right. Remember when he used to run midgets?
That's right. Bang, bang.
But they compare Senna with Andretti, with all the fire and all the intensity. There's the 2nd place man, Alain Prost. But the one thing they say that Senna may lack is Andretti's sense of humor, that underneath all that heavy intensity, then, here's one in trouble. That's number 3, Palmer. The Tyrrell Ford coming to rest at the Ford turn, just underneath the Renaissance Hotel here before they come up to the chicane. Palmer has struck the barrier, finished 6th last week in Canada. Alan?
Well, it's interesting to note that's where one of the sections of the circuit was relayed, so whether that's just starting to break up a little bit, which caused that spin or not, time will tell.
Now, you saw that cement there, and it was down about 3/4 of an inch when we walked around it last night, drove around it. There are the leaders right behind there, and you see Michele Alboreto now several laps down after he pitted a couple of times. We have 9 cars now retired from the 26 that started the event, and the latest retirees are Piquet and Derek Warwick. Here's turns 1 and 2 area, and you can see that cement that was laid into turn number 2. Trans Am cars were here yesterday, and Pete Halsmer won it on the last lap when they had one of those usual finishes. Correction, Hurley Haywood won it yesterday after on the last lap, Pete Halsmer had set on the pole. They had for Audi a little altercation between Scott Pruitt and Willie T. Ridge that took themselves out of the race, and Hurley Haywood came home first.
A lot of the European journalists who watched the race on television said it was one of the best races they'd ever seen. It was quite a contest. The 3,200-pound cars were really beating up the racetrack.
There's one of the Williams cars, and there is a racing version of a Skyhook. For car number 6, that's the Patrese car. They move it back to a safer place, and Nigel Mansell's car either has been or will be taken the same way off. They have several cranes all around the track to expedite the removal of these 1,100-pound cars should they get in trouble. Ricardo Patrese's car being removed from the course. Nigel Mansell's Williams is out as well. And as we watch Ayrton Senna continue to blaze away out in front.
Well, if Senna continues on to the end and Boutsen continues on to the end, they will be the only two men in Formula One racing this year that will have finished all the races. Warwick was the third man, and he's out of this one.
And the man that Ayrton Senna says is the next great driver is Guzman, his Brazilian compatriot that lived with him when he first came into Great Britain and got into Formula One racing. Who do you see as the new talents coming up in Formula One racing, Alan Jones?
Well, I think Nannini's showing a tremendous amount of talent, considering the amount of races that he's done and where he is today. I think he's got a great future. It's interesting to note with those Skyhooks, Ken, that the reason that they need so many of them around the circuit is because with the cement walls and the Armco, they literally cannot push the cars out of the way, so they've got to lift them out of the way.
Derek Warwick is back on the course again in the Aros Megatron car, the team of Jackie Oliver that I think a lot of Americans root for.
Derek Warwick told an interesting story the other day. He said he went to one of these sponsored dinners on a Friday in a former race and explained that his car just wouldn't get going that day, and he'd had a tough day. And in the question and answer session, one of the guests asked him, was he sure the handbrake wasn't on?
Yeah, well, you do get this, Chris.
Yeah.
Here you see Senna continuing to work away in first place as he has to right from the outset of this event. Gerhard Berger jumped in front for about 6 feet, and then it was Ayrton Senna all the way. Here's another car in trouble. That is Warwick, who just came back on the course, and he was out for just a few moments, and misfortune strikes.
Well, of course, that might have been cold tyres. That might have been in the pits for a fresh set of tyres, and he's gone out and perhaps got into it a little bit too quickly, and it looks like he's understeered into the fence.
Jack was at the Milwaukee kart race earlier this month, thinking about a possible IndyCar career. Alan, you went that route, the IndyCar career. Is it right for a Formula One driver, do you think?
Well, I thought about it for about 0.3 of a second, and then we went back to road racing.
Why? Why so sure?
Well, I had a go at Ontario Motor Speedway, which they tell me is almost a replica of Indy in terms of distance and layout and what have you. And I drove a backup car belonging to Bill Simpson, which was an old McLaren, and it didn't do anything for me at all. Perhaps if they would have painted trees on the wall or something, I would have felt more at home. But I just didn't feel comfortable with it.
Turn 12 is the Terminator for Derek Warwick. That's right down in front of the Cobo Hall area, and that's where he comes to rest.
It's the longest walk back to the pits.
Absolutely. Well, but he's near the garage area because they garage these cars in the bottom of the Cobo Hall area, so perhaps he has some of his clothes stashed away down there.
He could take the people mover.
Actually, if you look at that photograph, there was huge skid marks going into the corner, so it might suggest he would have left his braking a little bit late, and because of the cold tyres, they haven't gripped, and he's just literally understeered straight off into the Armco.
Yeah, look at him.
Well, that's not turn 12. That's down toward the tunnel. That's beyond that area. It's down toward the Atwater Street corner where he finally came to rest.
As these cars leave the race, there's 10 of them, or 9 or 10 out of the race. That makes the traffic less dense, Alan, and probably easier for those that are out there.
Well, that's one way of looking at it, Chris, I suppose, yeah. It certainly does. I mean, obviously, particularly if the cars that are out are the ones that are being lapped more frequently, it does make Senna and Prost's job a little easier, for sure.
Ayrton Senna maintaining this very healthy lead here at Detroit in our live coverage this afternoon. Later today, CBS brings you the Lakers and the Pistons, Game 6. It's in Los Angeles. Everyone around Detroit is really geared up for a serious contest that will see them come home victorious. And of course, in Los Angeles, they're looking forward to a Game 7. You'll know this afternoon. Just past the midway point in the 7th annual Detroit Grand Prix, and Ayrton Senna of Brazil for Team McLaren. Looks like he's on his way to a 3rd straight, with Alain Prost now running in 2nd position, his teammate. Thierry Boutsen has brought the Benetton Ford to 3rd position, the first of the normally aspirated cars. And then Andre de Cesare. Marvelous day for him. He too in a Ford is up into the 4th position. Gugelmin, the Brazilian, is in 5th spot with the March, and it is Pierluigi Martini, the first time that he's had an opportunity to score points. Only 6 cars score points in a Formula One if he can continue at his current pace.
Martini was put in that car as a replacement for the Spanish driver Adrian Campos, who had proved out just too slow for this Ford.
Campos had said if he didn't qualify for a race, he would quit. That's what I had heard, and he didn't qualify for the last race.
Well, they helped him quit. They fired him.
And the in-car camera car is out of it. Gugelmin, who we were just speaking about, having such a good day in the 5th position, is off course.
That's a tough break, but he's a nice guy from Brazil.
Mauricio.
Ayrton Senna's roommate for a while in England when they were coming up through the ranks, and now his car's by the side of the road.
So the March is retiring. It had come up into the point position. That would have been the 2nd time they had scored points this season. I think we may have an opportunity to see what happened here. Just brought it to a halt there. Pretty hard to tell what happened to Gugelmin at that point in the race.
He gets high marks for angle parking.
I think it was just a pure case of mechanical problems, and he's pulled off.
So March, which had some pretty good races back in the 70s, early 70s, remember that? They won 2 or 3 races back in those days.
They're having problems in IndyCar racing these days with the Lolas doing as well as they are, but they'll come back. It's interesting to watch these cars that do so well, and then a year or 2 later they're at the bottom of the barrel, and some other cars doing well. And we talked to Mario Andretti about that, and he said it's happened in racing historically. Cyclical. One make is on top. Lotus was on top for so many years and way down, and then come back again. And it just never seems to end.
And we may be experiencing a record-breaking season with these McLarens, the way things are beginning to shape up. In the first races, nobody can get close to Senna in qualifying, and Senna and Prost once they drop the green flag on the event itself. David Hobbs is at race control. Let's visit him now.
Well, there's a cathedral-like hush here in race control as the officials here watch these 10 monitors plus 2 scoreboards. They've got the line monitor that you got up there in the booth, and of course they've got some more steady monitors of some of the corners. In a city street circuit like this, of course, it's particularly important that they have these monitors so they can see what's going on around the track, unlike, say, Daytona or the Indy 500, where you can see every car everywhere on the track. We've got some American officials in here, Roger Indy, who's the clerk of the course, with his assistant. And of course we've got some permanent FISA officials who travel the Formula One circuit with the world. In the corner there's the map with the coloured portion showing who's where, what medical facilities are, where they are on the circuit, how they're moving around. And of course the scorer who's sitting there writing down comments on things that are happening. So there you have it here in race control, very quiet, very hushed, and very seriously, intently watching all these monitors.
Keeping track of 13 left-handers, 7 right-hand turns here, administrating the entire weekend very well, those people in that control area.
You know, it's interesting, members of the local sports car club serve as marshals around the course, and this type of course with 20 turns and a lot of buildings blocking the view require a lot of workers,
Here we're taking a look at the interval once again between first and second, between Senna and the number 12 of Alain Prost. There's the leader, Senna, and it's better than 8 seconds they're reporting at the present time. Let's take a look at the rest of the schedule here this season in the Formula One competition. There's how it began. Detroit coming up is France. They'll be in southern France at Paul Ricard come July the 3rd, and then on to the British Grand Prix. That's back at Silverstone again this year, the next couple of years.
It's rather featureless track. West Germany on the 24th of July is going to be at the Hockenheim circuit.
Hungary's your favorite, isn't it, Chris?
Oh, I love it over there at the Hungaroring. It's a nice circuit. They have great pierogies there.
And November 13th, it all comes to conclusion down in Australia, where I understand, Alan, this is the event of the year.
Well, it certainly is as regards Adelaide, but I don't think, unlike last year or certainly the year before, it's going to be the title decider, that's for sure. I think we're going to have that well in advance.
Oh, I don't know. I think these two guys are going to start racing for the championship.
Oh, certainly it may be for drivers, Chris, yeah, certainly not for manufacturers.
No, that's true. I talked to Prost yesterday and asked him about this, and he said, well, if there's a championship at stake, he says, we're going to race for it.
Well, I think they're racing for it now, quite frankly. I think, as you said before, there is no orders in the McLaren camp, and, you know, when that green light goes on, these two guys are just racing each other.
When you drove for Williams, were you under orders?
No, we weren't. In fact, there was a bit of controversy in 1980, I think it was. We had this complicated rule that if one driver was more than, I think, or less than 5 seconds in front of the other driver, and we were in turn 15 seconds in front of the guy who was third, we had to hold station. But if it didn't get to that, we could race each other.
Pretty good struggle here for 6th position. Notice the red car. Coffey and Prost has just come into the pits. Coffey is running in the 6th position. Directly behind him is Arnoux, and there is Alain Prost on pit road.
You know, his interval dropped to 20 seconds on that one lap. Obviously, his tires have gone away.
Now, this could be a very interesting turn in the race, you know, because if Senna decides to keep going and Prost comes in at the right time and gets fresh tires, this could help him tremendously.
Now watch Prost set up the race's fastest lap.
Arnoux in number 25, the oldest driver in the race, getting in between those two cars battling for 6th position. There you see Alex Coffey in the red car, and directly behind him comes one of the McLarens, scooting underneath him down Jefferson. Behind Coffey, fighting for position, is Arnoux in the Ligier.
Yeah, that lap that Prost took to stop was an over 2 minute and 10-second lap. So his car had slowed way down in the last lap or so before he went in for a rubber change.
Inflation problem?
Now it'll be interesting to see what Senna does.
Well, here's the contest on the course. Alex Coffey, who for the first time has an opportunity to score points, is being challenged by Arnoux, a 7-time winner in Formula One. There's a lot of starts, and Chris pointed out earlier, the Ligier has had just a terrible year. The design has not worked at all, but they have qualified a little better here in Detroit. A couple of races, they didn't get a Ligier on the grid.
That's right, you missed it out.
Prost's stop actually wasn't such a hot one by Formula One standards. It was 11.8 seconds. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do with Senna if and when he comes in.
And they have radio control of those drivers now. It'll be interesting to find out if they're planning to bring Senna in to get a little insurance for a 1-2 finish on McLaren here today. More shortly.
No.
We're back with you, and Senna has just pitted for 10 8/10 seconds for a tire change. We can show it to you here. Moments ago on pit road, Senna, the leader, pulling on pit road here in Detroit, slapping on new Goodyear tires. Remember that his teammate was in 11 8/10 seconds, 10-8, and he's back out. And that in the process of getting on pit road, Prost had run very slowly. Senna came in blazing. Senna retains the lead.
There's the interval out, more 32 seconds. So he takes the pits, changes tires, and never gives up the lead.
There you see the third place car, which is being shown as Boutsen. Thierry Boutsen's car. The Benetton Ford, normally aspirated car. And there you see the man that is in third. Let us run down.
The Ford people had hoped that if the McLaren did have to stop, that one of their cars would have taken the lead, but it's not that way.
No, they've got such an advantage. It's a luxury to be able to come in and do a pit stop like that and still go out with a substantial lead.
There was a brief report that he had pulled himself up in the lead. I don't think he was able to make up that much time. Thierry Boutsen in car number 20 for the Benetton Ford team. Senna and Prost in Team McLaren.
The fastest lap of the race was set by Prost on the 4th lap at 1:44.876. So here we are, 42 laps into the race, and the hot stuff was at the beginning.
Here's Philip Alio's car. And Alio running well back in the field in the Lola Ford, but running. Lola tries to get some of their problems sorted out this year. 12 cars have retired. The latest retirees are Oscar Lorori and Nannini. Alessandro Nannini has fallen by the wayside. 12 now out of the 26 that started. Dr. Palmer's car was reported the fastest car except for the McLarens here today.
Well, only 3 cars are on the lead lap. The 2 McLarens and Terry Boutsen and the Benetton.
Reviewing those standings for you after these pit stops up in front, as we have it, Senna is first, Prost is second, Boutsen third. De Cesare is in fourth with the real Ford, and then in fifth is Martini, sixth is Coffey, and seventh is Arnoux. And Arnoux has been nipping away at the red number 36, the Dallara, which is about to score its first points in Formula One composition if everything hangs together there. Manufacturers' Championship, seems little doubt that McLaren is on its way to its 4th victory in that category. But the driver title, take the gloves off here a little later this season, I am sure. Prost has been very careful over the first few races, but the sense was that without driver's orders that he would pick up the pace considerably in the last half of the season. Here's Senna, maintaining first, and he has done nothing but continue to build on that lead since the get-go here this afternoon. Here they are coming on to Congress, looking a little further back in the field. Palmer's car, Bailey's car, and behind it, one of the Lolas. At number 4, continuing to show well. We'll be back with more in a moment. We have to dictate things. We have to attack. We're not going to be in a reactionary situation. So those are the thoughts of Chuck Daly as they settle down to this afternoon's game number 6 of the NBA, that's passed on to our producer Bob Stenner. And here we're fighting for 11th place in this event. It's a pretty good scrap that's going on. Julian Bailey, who was the first Britisher to really do well in the Formula 3000 series, driving the Tyrrell car, and having his own little personal war with Philip Alio. And at the moment, Bailey's had the best of it. Julian Bailey running 11th position.
Bailey is apparently quite a fundraiser in addition to being a racing driver. It's said that he brought $2 million to the Tyrrell team for that ride.
And he used to be a window washer. I've been a window washer, an insurance salesman, a furniture. He would do anything to keep going. Folks are British. He was brought up down in Spain, and whatever it would take to get in a race car, he's willing to do.
Maybe saw something through the window that it resulted in a $2 million sponsor.
There you see. First of all, and once again, Philip Alio has moved around. There's the Minardi. For a moment, we were back with Friend Bailey, not the case. As you watch the car that is being shown in 3rd place, Terry Boutsen.
A little earlier on, Arnoux had a nice little spin while he was having a go at trying to get past Caffey, but he gathered it up without hitting anything, and he's off and after him again.
Point counting positions in the race: Senna first, Prost second, Boutsen third, De Cesare in 4th, Martini is in 5th, and Alex Coffey is in 6th.
You know, Martini's a 27-year-old Italian, brought in to replace Campos, as we mentioned earlier, and he's going to get a point today. That team has not been doing well this year. Shows it with a different driver, it can do well.
Someone's made a right decision somewhere.
Yeah. 44 laps are now complete. 64 the distance to be run on this 2.5-mile course in Detroit. And McLaren is just thrashing everyone, as they have in every event this year. This is event number 6. It started in Brazil, then went to Italy for the 2nd event. From there, they moved on, and in race number 3, it was Monaco on that very tight street course. Then Mexico, then Canada, and wherever they have flown their colors, this McLaren team has come out on top. And Ayrton Senna has started every race on the pole. A lot of Brazilians around Detroit, better than 1,000. They have a club in this area. And right now, David Hobbs is with some of those Brazilian fans of Ayrton Senna.
Well, it's a real carnival here behind the grandstands here, the downtown streets of Detroit. We've been down to some of the food concession stands. There's some great food there. And there's a fan here of Ayrton Senna. Flavio is the name, I believe, from Brazil.
Yeah.
What do you think of Ayrton so far? Big lead.
Yeah, he's gonna win. We're gonna have a carnival over here after the race.
A big carnival?
Yeah, a big party over here with Brazilians.
What are you doing here in the States?
I work for Action Program and I'm living here for a year.
What do you think of the Detroit Laker game that's coming up this afternoon on CBS after the race? You going to watch that?
Pardon me?
The Lakers-Pistons game on the television this afternoon at 3:30.
Sure gonna beat the LA Lakers.
Well, there you got a man that wants to beat the LA Lakers. A big Ayrton Senna fan, got his Brazilian flag here, ready to go. And I'm sure the way race is going so far, we're going to have another Brazilian picture here in Detroit this afternoon.
Pretty intense day for Detroit fans, David. Here's Ayrton Senna leading in the Formula One race and for all racing fans. And later on, and there's a few other things going on in Detroit this afternoon. There they are. There's the bottom of the third, the American League, Toronto and Detroit and Tiger Stadium. They're battling for that front spot in the East. From the Goodyear blimp. It's from the old Enterprise we're getting these shots of Tiger Stadium this afternoon. Now the Tigers are rolling around this 2.5-mile track, clawing away at each other. And at the present time, for an excellent house, Senna and Prost for McLaren are leading. Boutsen and the Benetton Ford and the Cesare lies fourth.
You think there's more people in the baseball stadium than here, Kenny? I bet you there are.
This is a great crowd that's turned out, and a surprising crowd.
Alan, take a look at the shot there, that stuff on the track. Those are the marbles, right?
Yeah, that's what we call marbles, and if you get on them, it's like walking on marbles. You slide all over the place. It's interesting to see also that Alboretto's charging at the moment. I think he'll be in the top 6 fairly soon. He's 8th at the moment.
Michele Alboretto's Ferrari, which had qualified for third for the event, fell back in the early going, is running 2 laps down, trying to make up some time and score a point or two. Next Sunday, live on CBS, it's the Michigan 400 miles on the 2-mile track. As we watch René Arnoux walking away, he had been running in 8th place, falling by the wayside in that car. And Michele Alboretto has also just fallen out. We were talking about how he might be pulling up to take a position. Alan Jones had just spotted that, and there he came to rest.
Yeah, I think I might have put the mockers on him. As soon as I mentioned he was charging and coming up, here we see him off the circuit. 7th and 8th place, both retiring within a few seconds of each other in this event, Alboretto and Arnoux. Also, as De Cesaris goes by, it sounds like he's got a broken exhaust, so let's hope that doesn't stop his fine charge. At the moment, he's currently in 4th place, so let's hope he can stay there despite a broken exhaust. De Cesare running in 4th. 13 cars have now retired from the field.
That's half the field.
Half the field is gone. We were mentioning that next week it's Michigan, live here on CBS.
We'll see some passing there.
Well, we'll see more passes probably in the first lap than we've seen all season in Formula One.
You know, I've been to all the races, and so far this year, there's been 1 pass of a running leader in 6 Formula One races. 1 pass. Amazing.
And even for the sophisticates who really like Formula One, this is a very long year when McLaren dominates as it has, and there isn't that kind of competition, which America is so used to. Yesterday, the Trans Am race on this track was incredible. They passed each other. There was a lot of action going on, and some very good racing. And today, Ayrton Senna is putting on a brilliant performance. He's driving beautifully, but he's the class of the field, and it's a walkover.
I think that the allowance of technology to become so important in Formula One racing is hurting the competition.
Alan?
It is indeed. I mean, at the moment, Jonathan Palmer's moved up to 6th position, by the way, so he's going fairly well. Chris, as you say, technology-wise, do you know that Honda can actually monitor what these engines are doing now in Tokyo?
You mean at the moment?
At this very moment in Tokyo, they can sit in their headquarters and monitor the exhaust gases, the heat, the turbo speed, everything.
No wonder they're spending $60 million on their racing program this year.
And still more retirees as this race continues on. According to 64 laps, Philip Alliot just retiring from the event.
Well, that's the Lola Ford there. Guerin LaRouche, Cal-Mel's Lola team. There's something about this track that's tough on the equipment, I'll tell you, and it's not the surface.
I think it's a very demanding surface. You have a lot of bumps. That puts a lot of strain on the drive shafts, on all the drive components. Certainly very tiring on the drivers. It's very much a stop-start circuit. Every year we've raced here, we've had a lot of retirements.
Well, as the cars go faster, that means they have to slow down harder for the corners and so forth, tougher on the brakes and so forth. I noticed during the practice that Prost kept asking for stiffer suspension. got to be tough on his backside.
Oh, too right. You know, with the suspension being stiff like that, these guys are now wearing kidney belts and what have you to just keep everything in shape.
Let's get David Hobbs in on this down on pit row. David?
Well, the days of domination are not new, you know. Back in 1964, Honda brought out their very first Formula 2 racing engine, car racing engine, and one Denny Hulme and Jack Brabham, now Sir Jack Brabham, drove those cars, and they came first and second in every European Formula 2 round back in 1964. So we shouldn't be too surprised about Honda's supremacy here. Also, McLaren have had their crack of the whip before, back, if you remember, in 1968, 69, 70, 71. The McLaren Can-Am team with Bruce McLaren and Denny Hulme won absolutely everything here in North America. And I think that in some ways, you know, an absolutely dominant team, rather than frightening spectators away, tends to draw them in because they want to come and see if it really is possible, if it really is true. I mean, we're approaching more and more records all the time. Alan Prost won 31 Grand Prix. Is he going to win his 32nd, 34th, 40th? Ayrton Senna the same. He's up to 22 pole positions now in a relatively short career. Is he going to make it 23, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 30? Is he going to actually reach the #1 position in pole positions in 1988, beating Jimmy Clark's record of 20 years ago? I think the crowd start to get this feeling and they want to get to see some of these things, as well as the fact it's a little bit boring in some ways, but on the other hand, it does definitely attract people. Some of the people down here aren't too attracted to the race. I just asked somebody what they thought of Senna winning the race, and they said, who? But there it is, that's racing, I guess. And of course, Roger Penske looks like he's heading for that sort of a record in 1988 in the IndyCar racing as well. So it's not all bad, but technology certainly has got the whip hand in this race today.
Well, of course, in Formula 1, the races only go once in every country. They don't have a following of fans for the series. People come to their annual Grand Prix race, and if it's a bad race, they have 51 weeks to forget about how bad it was.
Well, I told you that Palmer was going quite well, and he was now up into 6th place. In fact, he's now done the quickest lap of the race at 1 minute 48.
Got one car in trouble here. That's the teammate of Oscar Owari stepping away. Is that Modena who crashed yesterday, having trouble again today?
Yeah, looks like it.
He backed into the wall yesterday. They get him out of the car with a back brace. And once again, he's had a problem, and he'll become the 16th retiree from the event.
There are a lot of people who say this is the star of the future, Stefano Modena. Bernie Ecclestone is very high on him. He's a young-looking guy who needs a barber, I think.
Chris, you might notice as he's taking off his balaclava, you'll see some elastic on his left wrist. A lot of the drivers are putting this on their hands, because on a circuit like Detroit, where you're changing gears so often, they're getting severe blisters on their hands, and a lot of them are wrapping the palms with elastic or plastic, like a bandage, to stop them from getting blisters.
That's interesting, yeah. Well, you know, when you think of 57 gear changes a lap here, it's a lot of shift work. You divide that into the lap time, and you find that it's a gear change made on the average of every 2 seconds.
Exactly.
There's the leader, and he's just lapped the 3rd place car. He's lapped Terry Boutsen as he came by.
Show off.
We'll be back with more of the Detroit Grand Prix after this message and a word from your local station. Ayrton Senna has now put a lap on everyone except his teammate, Alain Prost, here in the Detroit Grand Prix, as he dominates and thrashes this field like no one has ever done in the previous 6 races run here. Prost is the man there, you see, who is in 2nd place. Thierry Boutsen in the Benetton Ford is 3rd. Andre de Cesare, who may be having some mechanical problems developing, stays 4th. Martini is running in 5th, and Jonathan Palmer is being shown at 6th at 53 laps. Now, in the last lap, Palmer has moved in on Martini and has taken the 5th spot, relegating Martini to 6th. Palmer is up 1 more slot. So Jonathan Palmer, that had a 6th place a week ago, the doctor from Great Britain, is now in 5th position, and he's turning some incredible laps out here. Alan was saying that they have been the fastest laps anyone has turned on the course today.
Well, up to date, Ken, I think he's done the quickest lap of the circuit. And
certainly in the normally aspirated cars.
They say that pit stop is coming up on Palmer.
I think actually Jonathan made a pit stop on the first lap. I think he damaged the front of his car, had to make that pit stop. So it's an interesting speculation to see where he might be had he not had to make that stop.
That's right. That's right. He was giving Boutsen a battle for third place, probably.
Yeah, he's going really well. He's charging.
His teammate Julian Bailey's doing pretty well today, too, back there in 9th position.
Julian's a first-year Formula One man, having come out of Formula 3000. The only British driver to win a Formula 3000 race last year. There's a lot of people hope that he does well. He seems to be a very well-liked young fellow.
And the only all-British team currently running. There's the leader again. In the past several years, the first all-British team, Palmer and Bailey. Here's the third place car just went by, Thierry Boutsen, who is a lap down to Ayrton Senna at this time.
And I tell you, Palmer's really making ground on, or seems to be making ground on Boutsen. This will be an interesting battle that could evolve. You know, with the majority of the race gone, this could be interesting.
So we'll follow Jonathan Palmer, who tries to score for Ken Tyrrell. That'll be a team to watch.
I would think that somebody with an education like Palmer has and a doctor's degree, been a resident physician in a hospital in England, has given it all up to become a racing driver, a knight of the roaring road.
There's the third place man, Thierry Boutsen. A lap down to this man, Ayrton Senna, who hasn't put a wheel out of place since we began the Detroit Grand Prix. Coming up, the Pistons and the Lakers. Pistons can wrap it all up this afternoon in Los Angeles. The Lakers, it's a must-win situation. That's next on CBS Live this afternoon. We're in Detroit, and there is Dr. Palmer trying to take a lap back right now from Thierry Boutsen. And if he hadn't come in early to change the nose in that car, imagine what we could have had here.
I wonder if Boutsen knows he's a lap down.
Oh, I'm sure he does. I'm sure he'd be well informed of exactly where Palmer is. But still interesting to note that Palmer has disposed of him and is getting away. That means that Boutsen's probably in a little bit of trouble, or indeed he's conserving the car because there's only some 7 or 8 laps to go. He knows he's very comfortable in the place he's in.
You know, at Monte Carlo, Ayrton Senna had a lead like this. It was breezing along, and he lost his concentration for a moment, hit the guardrail, and Alain Prost went on to win. So it's not over yet.
Only time he's lost, and that was when Ron Dennis told him to slow it down just a bit. Remember, that was in Monaco, just back off a little, and that was the one time when it hasn't worked out for him.
What about a driver being told to change his rhythm, Al? Does that upset a handicap sometime?
I never really used to like being told to do that because the best guy that's in command of what's going on is the guy in the cockpit. He knows how he's going. He knows whether he's comfortable or not. And I think that you drive your own pace. Now, if you are told to slow down, that can really get into your rhythm. That can upset you.
Let's go. The Brazilians are getting into it a little early this afternoon. Carnival may be beginning in Detroit just a tad before the finish. Here's David Hobbs.
Standing in the quietly confident confines of the McLaren International Pit, and with me is Creighton Brown, one of their directors. Creighton, we were discussing earlier about the monotony of the McLaren domination this year. Do you think that's good or bad for racing, really?
Well, it's certainly not bad for us, but David, I suppose, realistically speaking, in terms of good racing, it's probably not such a good thing if it carries on for too long. But historically, looking back over the history of Grand Prix racing, there have been various times in history when a particular team has dominated. One looks back before the war with Mercedes and Auto Union. You look at the times in the 60s and 70s with Lotus. Perhaps you look at ourselves in '84. But I think historically these things don't happen forever. And when you're riding high as we are at the moment, quite honestly, there's only one way you can go from there, and that's back down again sometime. And we are certainly very well aware that this sport is exceedingly competitive, and we may be dominating at the moment, but I doubt if we'll be there forever.
Well, you've obviously got two of the best drivers in the world. How do they get on together? Is there much open rivalry between them?
Yes, the relationship between Ayrton and Alain, I'm very happy to say, is first class. I mean, they're both, in my opinion, the two most professional drivers in the world anyway, and I think it's reflected in their relationship. They work together very, very well. They're completely open about sharing information and so on. And this is one of the reasons why we're so competitive at the moment. I make no bones about the fact that we are particularly happy by the way that our two guys are working together. It's very productive.
Ayrton today equaled the record of consecutive pole positions by getting 6. And Do you think he can get 16 in a season? Do you think he can clean up this season and get all the pole positions this year? I mean, is it possible?
Well, I have to say that I've never seen a driver quite as quick as Ayrton when it comes to just a one-lap blinder to get pole position. He seems to have a unique ability to pull just that little bit extra out of the bag, and it's pretty shattering. I see no reason why he shouldn't get 16 pole positions this year.
Well, there we see Creighton Brown from McLaren International, quietly confident that his man may get all the pole positions this year, and certainly not wanting to run under their luck before the 88 season's over. So back to you in the booth for the final few laps of this Detroit Grand Prix.
As we watch Ayrton Senna continue to dominate here today, we'll be back with more of the Detroit Grand Prix and see if it will be the third straight Detroit victory for the Brazilian. There are 4 laps to go as we're bringing you live coverage of the Detroit Grand Prix, and there you see the leader, Ayrton Senna, who has just let Jonathan Palmer unlap himself by 1. Palmer down 2 laps to the leader, and he blazed by him on the main straightaway as Ayrton Senna has become very conservative in the past few laps. Chris Economaki asked Alain Prost if there was a rivalry between teammate Ayrton Senna and himself.
Yeah, it's there, but it's not as hard as everybody could think, because we are part of a very big team, very important team with a big constructor now with Honda, and we don't want to do any mistake, and we don't want to push too much and fight too much, considering that the main thing is, important thing is the team is winning. But then we have a nice fight. I mean, sport fight.
At the end of the season, when the championship is at stake, you will fight harder?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. That's normal.
That's the voice of the man who is challenging Ayrton Senna, the leader, his teammate, Alain Prost. Ron Dennis has said that in practice he expects the drivers to drive for the team, but come Sunday, he says, quote, "We expect them to drive for themselves, Alan." He says that motivation and desire to win is something that McLaren pays a lot of money for.
Well, that's quite right. I mean, that's why they chose him in the first place, and then to try and settle them down after that would be a mistake. No, Ron Dennis is very good. He would just let them do their own thing in the race for sure.
Now here's Prost, the second place man, number 11 McLaren, running that second position. And today it looks like Senna may tie him for wins in the season thus far. He continues at the pace he is now setting. Alain Prost still in second place here in the Detroit Grand Prix. Ayrton Senna slowing down. We're into the last 2 laps, and Senna has really stepped off the pace. He's backed up considerably here, apparently conserving fuel, conserving the car. He had a 55-second advantage over second place man Prost the last lap, and he's willing to give almost all of it up.
Well, that's right. He'd give all of it up except for that one last second. I mean, this is a luxury now that he's earned. He may be a little tight on fuel, who knows, but he can now just literally coast home. He's built up that tremendous lead. This was what I was saying earlier on in the broadcast. He went for it, he built up a lovely cushion, and now he can afford the luxury of just literally cruising home.
Ayrton Senna, who became the first man to win this race back-to-back the last 2 years, will now put down a pretty formidable challenge for anyone in the future. He pulls it off 3 in a row. One of the reasons he may be running very slowly here is that he's a little concerned about how much fuel he has on board. They've been restricted as to the amount the turbos can carry. They carry considerably less than the normally aspirated cars.
Well, that's right. In fact, Prost was disqualified after winning the Italian, or at the Imola. He crossed the finish line, he did his slow down lap, and then they found the car to be underweight. And he figured that if he hadn't have done that slow down lap, he would have used that fuel, and therefore the car wouldn't have been that much underweight. And that's why you'll always find now McLarens, when they cross the finish line, right at the very end, they'll pull up on the side of the track, literally yards past the finish line.
1 lap to go for Ayrton Senna and his third Detroit Grand Prix victory in a row. This brilliant driver, who they say is the driver of this period in Formula One, leading now with a lead that is less than 40 seconds, but it's healthy enough. All he has to do is bring it across. As you know, Alan, from your own experience, there are times when you get to within 300 feet and you come up empty.
Absolutely, and you know, really, the idea is to win the race at the slowest speed, not the quickest. There's no prize as for the time he did it in. It's the prize is the trophy when you're there.
Well, he's sitting on a lead. He's built up a good cushion here, and now he's trying to bring it home with Boutsen running in third. Thierry Boutsen, De Cesare in fourth. It'll be a great finish for De Cesare. Fifth, Jonathan Palmer was spot from a week back. Martini will score. He's in the sixth position now. Delma is just outside of the top six scoring positions in seventh, and Julian Bailey is having an excellent race for Ken Tyrrell as he maintains eighth. Alex Coffey is being shown in ninth. 17 cars have now retired from the event. And here's another one down. Looks like that is Julian Bailey's car that's in trouble.
That's a shame, so late in the race. That's a real shame.
Julian Bailey with wheels akimbo in car number 4. And here comes Senna up to the spot where Julian Bailey crashed as they come down to that first little tunnel by the Joe Louis Arena. There you see Thierry Boutsen, third place man, a lap down just behind Ayrton Senna of Brazil. And he is running just as slowly as he possibly can to get back to the line.
He just waved Boutsen by then. He doesn't even want him sitting close to him. He just said, look, go and get past me.
Not a race for the fleet. It is a race for the thinker here, as you said at the top of the show. And Ayrton Senna has backed off that fiery style of his, and he's got just about a quarter of a mile. Here he is into the last chicane, coming down to complete the 1988 Detroit Grand Prix, and to the line, Ayrton Senna, victorious here today before a tremendous crowd, and Brazil gets to celebrate yet another time here in Detroit. We mentioned earlier there's a club of about 1,000 Brazilians who live in Detroit. He, of course, their hero. And as we wait for Ayrton Senna to come back to the victory podium area where Chris Economaki will be chatting with him, let's go right to California, and Brent Musburger is standing by. Ayrton Senna, 28 years old, from Brazil, has won the Detroit Grand Prix for the third straight time. It marks his 9th victory in Formula One. He's headed to the victory podium area where Chris Economaki is standing by. It's going to be some contest coming up this afternoon between Detroit and LA. Not expected to be the walkover that we've seen here, where a 48-second advantage by Prost gives him the victory, or rather by Senna over Prost gives him the victory in the World Championship standings. However, it is Prost leading with 45. Senna now has 33, and Gerhard Berger is third with 18. Thierry Boutsen today picking up some points. He is now tied with Nelson Piquet for fourth at 11, and Michele Alboreto is sixth in the standings with 9 points. Well, here is Ayrton Senna coming to a halt after his brilliant drive here this afternoon. Let's go to Chris Economaki.
Okay, the Brazilian bullet is out of his car and flexing his muscles here. Get his helmet off, and we'll have a word with him. He's pulling his hands out. You can see how tough his hands are. He looks happy here. Joe Ramirez of Team McLaren gets the first tap from Ayrton Senna. And there's the balaclava coming off. Congratulations, Ayrton. 3 in a row. Let's see that hand here. How, okay?
Okay, tiring, very hot, very tiring, very difficult. The track was breaking up badly and was almost impossible to stay on the road.
Well, you slowed down very, very much at the end. Was it running out of fuel, perhaps?
Nah, plenty of fuel. Was just the track was breaking up, and I had such a lead that was no point to risk anything.
Okay, that start. Did you almost got beaten by Berger going in the first turn? Okay, he's going.
Okay.
Congratulations and good luck. We're losing him now to the formalities on the victory podium. Ayrton Senna of Brazil, 3 straight here in Detroit. A happy man, and he acts as though it was a very simple go. And Alain Prost is here now, getting a microphone shoved down. Alain, congratulations on second place. The officials here are not interested in having people interview their champions, and Senna's washing his face with some bottled water. Here's Thierry Boutsen, the third place driver, about to go up on the podium. Okay, back to Ken Squire.
The average speed today was 82.221 miles per hour for the 64-lap distance. 8 cars finished, 18 retired, 2 cars on the lead lap, and Senna led all the way to dominate the Detroit Grand Prix. We're back with you in Detroit. And once again, Detroit has a Brazilian flavor. As on the winning podium, it is Ayrton Senna, Supreme, Alain Prost of France in second, and Thierry Boutsen of Belgium in third. Let's take a look at the standings of the 8 people running at the finish. Senna, of course, leading the way with Prost, his teammate, in second place. And then Thierry Boutsen of Belgium giving a Benetton Ford a fine ride for third position. Andre de Cesare has an excellent afternoon with 4th place, and Jonathan Palmer finds himself in 5th when the day is done. Martini scores his first point of the season. That's 6th place for him. And among the others that have finished today, the 7th place when it was to be decided was Dalma, and then Alex Coffey of Italy finished in the 8th position. They were the cars still running of the 26 that commenced the activity for 64 laps. Now let's go to David Hobbs.
Well, I've got Jonathan Palmer here, who finished 5th. 13th last year, 5th this year. What about next year? First, Jonathan?
Well, I think my target next year will be to go to the race without having a pit stop to repair the car. Last year it was bent suspension, this year it was a bent front wing on the first lap, so I really did make it difficult for myself.
What did happen on the first lap? Just traffic?
Yeah, it was my fault, really. You know, it was all chock-a-block, and everybody ground to a halt at the 3rd corner at turn 3, and I was going a little bit too fast to stop and just nudged into the back of Johansson or somebody, or Modena or something, I can't remember.
How was the track? Everybody's talking about it breaking up. Was it all that bad?
Well, it began reasonably good, but after about 20 laps it started to get very slippery again. I think perhaps as the track temperature got up, it got more slippery, and then it got a little bit more grip later on. But I think by that time the tyres were going off. But the organisers did quite a good job patching it up, actually, and wherever it was patched up, it stayed pretty good.
Well, there seems to be a lot of oil on your helmet. Is that from anyone in particular, or just general oil?
I think it's general, sort of 67 laps of Detroit, following other cars. Yeah, no one in particular, I don't think.
Okay, before we go, let's just have a look at your little right hand there and see what a couple of thousand gear shifts have done to the doctor's hand this afternoon. Not a pleasant sight at all. Looks like he's been in the bath for 3 or 4 hours. And we go back to Ken for the final standings and a goodbye from Detroit. Thanks very much, Jonathan.
Well, let's take a look at those standings after 6 races. Prost still very much in command with 45 points. Ayrton Senna is second at 33, and Gerhard Berger has 18 and third. Then a tie between Piquet and Boutsen with 11 points. Let's go to Chris.
All right, here's Alain Prost, the second place driver. Congratulations, Alain. How difficult was it?
It was difficult, mainly because the track was a disaster today. It was even worse than before because the surface was breaking up after 20 laps, and then there was nothing to do. I mean, even if you were behind, if I was behind Ayrton, for example, there's no way I could pass him because it was too dangerous. And I prefer to stay second and wet because for the championship it's better than nothing. And if you push too hard, you have a big chance to hit the wall. I had odd moments, 2 or 3 times because of the brakes problem and gearbox problems, but I must say there was not a race, except the first 20 laps, it was not a race at all.
How's your hand from shifting? Oh, look at the blisters there. Oh, congratulations. Thank you. Right. Terry, nice to see you again now with your mask off your face. You look happy. How's your hand?
Perfect, no problem. I have a very good gearbox, no problem.
Oh, you're a very good driver. What kind of a day was it for you?
Well, it was rather difficult because the circuit was in very bad condition, and at least if you make a little mistake, you're out in the wall. So I tried to go as fast as possible, but avoiding to make any mistake. It was very, very dangerous, very difficult.
Many cars went out of the race today, more than ever before. Why do you think that was the case?
Because it's a very, very bumpy circuit, very difficult, quite a few accidents too, people hitting the wall, because the gravel, you know, the surface was breaking up. There was a lot of gravel. If you go 10 centimeters off the line, you're into the wall, so that was the main reason, I think.
What about your car? I understand this will be essentially the same car you have next year. Will it be a winner next year?
I think so. Well, I very much hope so, because I've been winning the normally aspirated class since 2 races now, very comfortably, and the car ran perfectly. I had absolutely no problem during the race.
You have enough strength left for the party Ford will throw for you?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, good luck to you, Thierry Boutsen. And there's the 3rd place man going into this box here for the unilaterals to be televised. So some 34 other countries. Okay, now let's go back to our host, Ken Squire.
82 mile per hour average, 3 miles per hour slower than this race has been done as a record pace for Senna. As this race comes to a close, we look out over the Detroit River toward Canada and the beautiful Renaissance Center. A final thought from you, Alan Jones.
Well, Ken, it was a slower race, I think, because A, the cars were down in horsepower from the previous years, plus the circuit was breaking up. For my point, it was a boring race, but nevertheless a safe one. I think that's always a main thing, and McLaren's dominance is making it a bit boring, but I think the battle for the two drivers should hot up, and I'm going off to have a Cole Foster's.
All right. Well, McLaren pulls it off again, 6 in a row. And that's the story here. There is a samba sound right now here in Detroit. What it will be at the end of the day after the Pistons, we'll know shortly. For Chris Economaki, David Hobbs, and Alan Jones, I'm Ken Squire saying so long from the Detroit Grand Prix in Detroit, Michigan. Stay tuned to CBS Sports. Coming up next, Game 6 of the NBA.